And so I think this is just helpful to go, maybe the kid just has an anxious attachment with you at this point, but it's not something you can't overcome.
Welcome to the Art of Raising Humans.
Hello, and welcome to episode 18 of the Art of Raising Humans podcast. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Sarah.
And we're here today to talk to you about attachment. I don't know if that's something familiar to you. If you heard that, I'm sure you've heard that in some form or fashion. When Sarah and I were kind of brainstorming on some ideas and topics to do for the podcast, I thought it'd be really fun to just do a podcast where we're kind of just talking about what attachment is, why it's so important to understand what kind of attachment we have as adults and parents, because we're probably going to pass that on to our children. And I think lots of times I almost forget to do it. And whenever I'm counseling or talking to parents, just because it's already kind of in my brain, and maybe sometimes I forget to explain it. But then when I do, I find it's always very helpful to parents to know it. So, Sarah, I wanted you to start first of just what's important about knowing attachment? Why would that be helpful to people?
Okay, so attachment is sort of how you are in a relationship, and it's important because usually it goes way back to when you were a little baby and you were young growing up. How did your caregivers meet your needs, be in relationship with you, the tension that's in a relationship, how was that handled? And then we carry that, we sort of learn, our brain learns how to be in relationship with people, and then we grow up into adults who then date people, and we have those similar types of relationships with those people. Then we have children, and we then attach, or lack of attachment, we build similar relationships with our children if we do nothing. If we do, let's say you have a great one, or maybe you have some. We'll get into the types. Maybe your particular style needs some help because of what happened or your childhood. That you don't have to pass that on, but it's important to know, because if you want to change something, you sort of need to know what you want to change and know how you are, have that internal insight to go, oh, this is what happened. This is how I am in relationships. Yeah. What do I want to do about it? What do I want to pass on to my children? Yeah. And what do I want to change in how we relate to each other?
Yeah, so what I hope happens in this podcast is I thought it was really fun to take a test and find out what kind of attachment I have or have had in the past, And I think it's what we hope to do by the end of this podcast is for people to be able to maybe better identify the attachment that they have. We'll actually provide in the notes a free attachment quiz. I don't know if it's great, but I found it and it was free and I did it. It was fun. It was really easy. So I just did it last night. It was great. So we'll attach that to the notes. So if you're curious, like, man, I wonder what kind of attachment I have. And it really does explain so many things, because you're saying, Sarah, this stuff happens basically when the kid's like 0 to 3, when their brain is like getting so formed and how so many important things, sleeping, eating, talking, walking, but also, how do I trust people? How do I trust relationships? Now we know this in a lot of negative ways. If a kid does not get healthy attachment, like they have really bad attachment, no one's responding to their needs. This was studied quite a bit in Eastern Europe, where there was orphanages of kids who were their needs weren't being met.
Well, their physical needs were met.
That's right, yeah.
But so their diapers were changed, they were fed, they were warm, clothes, but they didn't have any emotional connection with people.
And sometimes what happens to those kids is they get a diagnosis like RAD, reactive attachment disorder. And I've had a few kids like that in the school system when I was a school counselor, and I know you've probably interacted with some in the practice back when you were seeing kids. And it is really hard because they trust nobody. Like almost like a hug to them isn't something that feels good. It's something that they want to flee from, because a hug is almost like trapping them, at least in my experience with them. So I wanted to talk real quick about, let's define those attachment, there's basically 4 different, and you can feel free to look this up, but we'll give you a short definition and how to spot these. So what are the 4 different types of attachment?
All right, the first one is secure. This is a person who doesn't have a lot of avoidance or anxiety in relationship. They trust that you're going to be there for them. They can share their needs with you. And they're also free to go off and do things. They don't need you around all the time.
Yeah.
They can go off into the world and do things and come back and you're there. It's a very secure, I want to say peaceful, but it's a secure attachment, knowing my person, and it doesn't have to be a caregiver, my person in relationship with me will be there when I need them. but
Yeah.
I don't have to stay. I'm also free to go. And
Yes.
so
I
it's
think
a
in-
trusting relationship.
I think like in our marriage, I think we have a secure attachment in the sense of if I have feelings or thoughts, I think you care about them. So I think if I come to you with a problem, I think you want to hear them. And I think it's helpful to bring them to you. You know, I don't think I need to tell you everything that I'm thinking about. Otherwise, you'll be mad at me or something. I instead just go, oh, if I need Sarah, she's there and she'll help me. And if she needs me, I'll listen. I'll be there, right?
You don't worry about abandonment.
Yes. No.
The person's going to be there.
I like the example that we look at sometimes when we're at, like, when our kids were little and we'd be at like a playground. You'd see that kid who's able to say, hey, Mom, Dad, I'm going to go run off to the playground. They give their parents a hug and they go off to the playground. And then you'll see them. I mean, what would you say, 4 or 5 minutes into that play, you'll see them look back and you'll see them check in. They might even run back and share something about what happened on the playground.
Hey, Mom, watch me. I'm going to jump off this.
Yes,
Yeah.
but the whole time they're not like needing Mom and Dad to watch them the entire time, and they're also able to let go and go over there, right? So, so typically in most, I guess the percentages are when I looked this up, it was like 57% of the population has secure attachment, is what the study said. Now let's move from secure into different types of insecure attachment.
Okay. So I'll go into avoidant next.
Okay. Yep.
Avoidant is where you haven't been able to trust that relationship. So it's almost more, I can't trust you to meet my needs. You're not going to be there for me. You don't care about my internal world, how I'm feeling. It could be physical needs. But I'd say more importantly, it's your emotional needs.
Yeah.
You're not really going to be there for me. I can't trust that. So I'll just do it on my own. So I might be in a relationship, but I'm going to stay a little closed off. I'm not going to trust that relationship. It's just me and then the world. And so those people, even though they're in relationship, there's always space there. There's always distance that they can't trust that you're really, they're avoidant.
How would that happen as a baby? Like you just said, insecure, it'd be the baby has a need, the parent meets the need. Kid's hungry, So how would that happen in the 0 to 3 time? How would a kid start to build this avoidant type of attachment?
Let's say the child's crying for some reason, and if then the caregiver doesn't come, then the child might learn, okay, they're not going to be there for me. I've got to figure this out. It's just me.
I've almost heard it said this way. I remember one kid and I, this was a college kid, talking about when they were 4, and they remember being very upset and they were throwing a tantrum, and their parent put them in timeout and just walked away and told them to, basically figure it out. Don't come back till you're done with this. And I remember the kids saying they remembered at 4 having the thought, okay, I'm on my own. I need to figure this out on my own. It's not good to bring it to them. Like they don't want to see this. So I would think almost avoidant attachment was happening at that point for that kid, where they started to get this story of, you don't want to see this stuff that's happening in me. So I'll just avoid sharing it to you. And lots of times I find, Sarah, that can cause real issues then in the teenage years, because the kid has learned that message throughout the early years of like, you don't want to see me throw a tantrum. You don't want to see me be scared at night and when I'm thinking monsters in my room, because that's annoying to you, or whatever it might be. So the kid shuts that part down and says, well, but then that can be real problematic in the teenage years whenever the parents are wanting them to open up about their feelings and saying, why are you so, well, every time you come home and you just close the door and you don't open up, right? Now, it doesn't mean every teenager who does that has avoidant, attachment, but that could be a sign. And then when they get into a marriage, you can see how that would be a problem.
Yeah.
Because then the spouse would have a real hard time connecting with them.
It's people who have a really hard time with intimacy.
Yeah.
It's very uncomfortable for me to be vulnerable to you,
Yep.
because in their brain, it goes back to the moment I was vulnerable, that didn't go well. So they're that intimacy, even in the teenage years or in relationships in the future, is just, that's a very unsafe place. So they're not going to be intimate with people. They're going to hold back.
That's great. So then the third one, the third form, but also the second form of insecure attachment. What would you call it?
Anxious attachment. And honestly, my best example of that to me are dogs. Dogs have anxious attachment. Now that's almost where I've got to stay super close to you, and I've just got to share everything, and I've got to hang on really, really tight because I don't know what's going to happen. I can't let you go. And you'll see dogs who just have to follow their owner around, and they have to constantly pet it, and you
constant need reassurance.
don't leave the house. And you see this clingy sort of anxious. They almost overshare, and they're over invested in the relationship, and that's where you get those relationships where people are like, whoa, man, I need some space.
Yeah.
Is there's just this
Clinginess.
anxiety
Yes.
about it.
Uh-huh.
And you can feel it. It feels
Yeah.
like, oh, I need to wipe you off or what's,
Yeah.
and they're worried. They're so scared of losing the relationship or something. Not, again, it's a lack of trust in the
Yeah.
relationship. So I can't, where the other one wants to stay away, anxiety wants to stay close.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
where you going back to the playground, this is the child who can't leave my side because and then the avoidant child would go off and you'd be like, where did John go?
Yeah,
And your child's never checking in. They're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
looking back
yeah,
at
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Developmentally, this all
Yes,
changed.
yes,
Obviously,
sure,
if I'm
yeah.
talking about an older kid,
Yes,
they
of
might
course.
run off.
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. Very
talking
little
about that
kid.
younger
Yeah.
child, they kind of look back and check in.
Yeah.
If they're avoidant, they run off and they could care less, and you don't know where they've
Yeah,
gone.
yeah.
If they're anxious, they won't leave your side.
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
not going to go down that slide unless you're right there with me.
Yeah,
At
yeah.
an age where they should know that they're safe enough.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking though, as you're saying that, because I get the chance to spend a lot of time with teenagers, is teenagers nowadays with texting, it's like they'll say something and then they're looking at their phone.
Oh, yeah.
And they just are,
Yeah,
they're seeing a couple dots and they're like, they're going to say something. And like the anxiety, like I need reassurance. I need reassurance that what I just said is going to be received well. And anytime I'm seeing that in a teenager or an adult where that they text and they expect a text right back. If they don't get a text back, then that means that somehow they're mad at them or somehow the relationship's over or that, so instead of it being like, there could be a lot of reasons why they're not texting back. It could be they're thinking about it. It could be they haven't even gotten it yet. It could be maybe they saw those and they actually want to say something positive
Well,
back.
you see that insecurity.
Yeah.
It's the insecure attachment. I can't trust. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And so roughly, I think the percentage is, we said the most people, at least in this study, most people are in the secure category. I think the next most common was anxious. And then the next after that was avoidant. And then the least common is the last one, which is the disorganized, right? Can you tell us about that?
Right. That's sort of your disorganized is your avoidant and anxious. You've got it all going on. You have moments of, I'm going to draw really clear. No, I'm going to push you away. And it's disorganized.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's similar when you were younger, you didn't know what to expect from that caregiver.
Yeah.
And so your reaction to that
Yeah.
was this moments of anxiety and needing you close and then being so scared by that, I push you away. And
It might be, I meant to say, I guess to give a picture of it, when they're little, for the anxious one, I think the picture I read that I thought was really good was like the kid cries, the little baby does, the parent comes to meet the need, but then when the parent picks up the kid feels the anxiety from the parent.
Yeah.
The parent's like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. I don't know. So the kid's kind of confused because the kid's like, wait, my needs are being met, but apparently the parent thinks there's something wrong here, So I'm feeling, I think I should, but now I'm feeling like maybe there is something I should be anxious about, And so then like that's where that can lead into adulthood where I'm trying to meet a need, but then now I'm feeling anxious that maybe this need isn't actually getting met. There's more. But with the disorganized, it could be, you never know, the parent someday might come in and meet the need appropriately.
Yes.
Other times the parent might come in and get really mad at you for having the need. Other time the parent might come in and
Yes.
seem completely not even care that you have the
the
need, right?
relationship has been very unpredictable.
Yes.
The response from my caregiver was very unpredictable.
Now, so I hope as listeners are listening to these, maybe you've spotted a little bit of where you're at, I think there's a fifth one we want to talk about that I think is super important that I really think I fall into this category is one, I want to say for every kid and for every person, every adult, it isn't like you have one attachment. Right? I mean, it could be you had one certain type of attachment with one parent, another type of attachment with a different parent, right? So can you speak to that a little bit? How it isn't just like we're stuck in one type of attachment.
Yeah. I was thinking as you could be listening to this and going, oh no, and just realize you can move between different styles, right? You could be mostly secure and you might have a relationship where you might notice, oh wow, there's a lot of anxious in that relationship or avoidant in this relationship, or this one I just don't know, it's back and forth. And so this isn't let me go diagnose myself with some attachment, it's just, I can notice some patterns in relationships and wow, my grandma was great at doing this with me. So it's just to bring some awareness.
Yeah.
I had this anxious relationship, or I think I kind of do that a lot in relationship. You can still repair that. You can still parent yourself and get healing from that. So it doesn't mean it's predictive of every relationship for you. Going forward, this is it for you.
I think that's what leads to a lot of confusion is you might have a kid who one parent says, he's got a great relationship with me. Like he talks to me,
Yeah.
and like the kid seemingly has a secure relationship with that parent. But then the other parent's like, yeah, he doesn't do that with me. He seems like he's always nervous around me. He's like, he probably has an anxious relationship with you, right?
Yeah.
And so it's and a lot of times that might happen with a mom and dad, because maybe the mom was with the kid meeting the needs when the kid was little and the dad wasn't involved as much. And then the dad came in later on and the dad didn't know how to do that as well. So that's just like a typical example. So then the teenager might seem more nervous or more anxious, or the elementary age kid might around the other parent than they are with that one. And that can really be a thing of judgment, a thing of shame, where what's wrong with me? Why won't my kid do it? And so I think this is just helpful to go, maybe the kid just has an anxious attachment with you at this point, you know, but it's not something you can't overcome. It's once I can see that and define it and say, oh, going back to our previous one, we talked about the toxic rupture and the follow-up. I would think that's what you're trying to repair, is you're trying to go back with the follow-up and say, let's create a secure attachment that, you know, even when we have a break, I care. And I'm going to follow up. Now, like you said, I'm going to calm down and follow up, though. I'm not going to go, oh, God, I got to go fix this.
Right.
I just had to talk to
Chase
your
them
rupture.
down.
Yeah,
We have to talk about this
then the kid's
right
going to go,
now.
oh, my gosh, you're so anxious about this, right? But, excuse me, but it can be, I want to come back and I want to heal this and try to help bring some understanding so we can have a secure attachment type relationship.
Yeah.
And the reason why you want to do that is, one, I think it helped me too, Sarah, kind of going, when we read the research of just about, you're going to give the attachment style you have to your kid. Okay, because it just makes sense, because you're going to relate to your kid the way you were related to, unless you intentionally do some work to do that differently, you know? And I really think that's the work I had to do when the kids were little. I've noticed with all three of the kids how somehow I got better and better and better at learning how to attach to them in a secure way. I remember with Abby, I didn't know what I was doing. And I remember looking at you as she would calm down with you when she was upset as a little baby and be so like, I'm an idiot. Like, why can't I do this? How does Sarah know how to do this? And I have no idea. So then I remember that one time you left me home, you'd gone back to work, and I was supposed to feed Abby. And I was freaking out because Abby wouldn't feed. And the anxiety in me was like, she's going to die. Like, your daughter's going to. So I actually called her babysitter at the time, a friend of ours at the time named Carla, and she had been watching Abby. And I brought her over to Carla. And Carla, she went right away, took the bottle from Carla. I was like, what is the problem? I'm her dad. But I didn't know at that time that I think I was repeating probably some similar stuff from my own childhood about that anxiety about meeting the need. I didn't know how to meet it, and immediately the anxiety popped up. And if I hadn't been conscious of it, I would have probably just repeated that with her the rest of our relationship. But thank goodness, as you and I worked on that together, it got better with my son, and then now with my youngest, I didn't feel any anxiety. When she had needs at night, woke up in the middle of the night, I felt completely confident that I could meet them, and I wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such a great example of how we can grow as parents, and our knowledge of it. You know, little places where I go, oh, you know what? I'm a little anxious there. I'm a little, just that it brings some self-awareness. So then you can go into the situation and say, oh, okay, what am I going to do about that? How can I, and you got the skills, you recognized it. As growth happens, we can change these things by that insight. And so it's just to bring awareness so we can engage differently in these relationships. We can pass on to our children with an intentional way of being in relationship instead of just letting it happen. Just doing the things we only know to do.
So I want to wrap up the podcast by talking about the fifth type of attachment, which is called earned secure attachment. Okay. Thank you. Giving me the floor.
Yeah.
So,
giving you the
for
floor.
you can't see Sarah. She just pointed her hand at me like, you talk about that. Okay. So earned secure attachment was so good to hear about that, because it meant that even though I knew throughout high school and even in my college years, I think I did have an anxious attachment when it came to relationships. I would get really panicky, and there was a lot of moments of growth. But when I heard like, oh, you can grow into this earned secure attachment, now there's a couple ways to do that. I think one of the ways that really helped me was faith. You know, faith is really important in my life, and I think the ability to believe and have faith that there's somebody bigger than me who really knows everything about me and still likes me and not only likes me, but loves me, and actually is there to help me. So anytime I need help, and, so I think it really helped, and even the research shows this, that that's a really helpful part of faith, is the belief that maybe I don't know if I can do it with my spouse, or maybe I don't know if I can do it with my parents, or maybe I know whoever it is, maybe I don't even feel like I have friends, but I can go to somebody else outside of me that I can pray to or talk to that really cares about me and cares about my problem, is never saying they're going to abandon me or reject me. They sincerely just want to be with me. And I think a lot of times in prayer, of just by faith believing that God wants, that really helped me move more towards that.
Yeah, so it's the idea that what you're saying is even if you didn't get secure attachment, you can still, they call it earned.
Yes.
But you can grow into a secure attachment. And I think that's just really beautiful and brilliant about us humans, how we can change, we can grow, we can become secure. And I think we all are going to have relationships in our past that were avoidant or anxious or disorganized. And so there's just a piece of being human where there's little places where I'm going to want to recognize that, and I'm going to want to go into earn secure attachment and want to move in that direction. I want to be aware so I can notice the spots and go, okay, let's move into some secure attachment there.
I think another way to do besides faith is just even in our marriage. I feel like there's been many times where, although I am pretty open, and I felt there were times that, I want to share this with Sarah, but I don't know if Sarah's going to like what I have to say. I think that Sarah might be kind of like annoyed or frustrated with that, or dislike that, or reject me if I say that. But instead, I took the risk because I believed it was important to do it. And thank goodness your response to it was helpful, And I believe you've done that with me at times and shared with me. And so through that, I'm very proud to say I took that test yesterday and it came up. I'm now secure. I've got secure attachment. It was great. So I was really excited to see that because I tried to answer all the questions honestly, and it seemed like, and I really do feel like I'm at that point now.
You did some work and you got there.
Like I said, I turned 45 recently, and I think I'm there now. So I want to encourage all the listeners. We're going to include this link. It's just a place I found. Once again, I haven't researched this whole place, but it's attachmentproject.com, and there's a free quiz, and we'll include the link in the notes to this podcast. You can just go on there, and you can take it. It talks about your relationship with your parents, your relationship if you have a spouse, that kind of thing. And right now, I feel like since college, about 20, 25 years now, there's been tons of growth that I think is specifically tied to how I've healed some of the attachment issues I had from whether it's from childhood with my parents or whether it's through mentors in my life or whatever. There's been a lot of key moments where I feel like I've been able to move from having anxious or avoidant attachment towards secure attachment.
Yeah, I think it interests me, fascinates me how our childhood, the art of raising humans, it's not just, they're 18, they're raised. I mean, we then just take over, right? Our parents did this work and then we just take over, but we continue to raise ourselves. Mm-hmm. We have to take that work and we have to do it now. Yeah. And we continue to do that in our life. Yeah. And I just think that's a really beautiful thing and an empowering thing because we're not just stuck. We're not fixed. We can. And I think attachment's a great place to see
almost
that.
like we can reparent some of those spaces, right? Yeah. Reparent those spaces to where they do become secure.
We parent ourselves. We move into a place of parenting ourselves.
Have you taken the quiz yet?
Prepare that. I'm sure I took one a long time ago, but I didn't take this one.
Where do you think you're at?
I would say secure.
Yes, okay, I think you are too.
But there's always spaces or relationships you can think, but that one isn't secure.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this topic. I hope it was helpful. Once again, I want to make sure you don't come away thinking we're trying to do a diagnosis here or do any kind of. This is simply just information. Just hoping we give you information to raise your awareness, and to help you move towards being the parent you want to be.
Yeah, and talk to a professional. If this brings something up in you, go talk to a professional about it.
And hopefully raising your kids up to be securely attached humans, because it's actually going to help them in their marriage and parenting in the future as well. So thank you very much for listening. Please go on to the podcast, comment. If you take the test and you get we'd love to hear about it. What did you come up with, right? Do you feel like it was a good explanation of your childhood and how you grew up? Did it really connect with you? Which ones kind of really resonated with you as we explained those? So we'd love that feedback from you, and we just hope you you have a great day. I know it's probably cold wherever you're at, so I hope you're warm and in front of a fire listening to this podcast. So give us 5 stars, tell your friends about it. We'd love to help as many people as possible. So have a wonderful day. The Art of Raising Humans podcast should not be considered or used as counseling, but for educational purposes only.